Mark Carney's shocking silence when reporter hits him with a question no one dares ask. Since Mark Carney's victory in the April 28 snap federal election and his appointment as Prime Minister, Canada has entered a phase of dramatic policy shifts. One of his most controversial announcements has been the promise to increase Canada's defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, more than doubling current levels. While this pledge was framed as necessary to secure Canada's place in global alliances and bolster national security, it has sparked intense domestic backlash. Canadians are not just skeptical, they're demanding answers. And when those answers didn't come, the silence became the story. During a nationally broadcast press conference, Carney faced a moment of scrutiny when asked a pointed question: how would the government fund this massive military expansion without hiking taxes or gutting essential social programs? What followed was a long, awkward pause. For nearly 9 seconds, the Prime Minister appeared stunned and unable to respond. When he finally did speak, his answer was vague and generic, claiming the economy would grow enough to absorb the cost, without providing even a basic outline of how that would be achieved. The press and public took notice, and the video clip spread across social media like wildfire. This incident left a lasting impression, not just because of the silence, but because of what it symbolized. Carney, often touted for his intelligence and financial expertise, had no clear plan to support one of his government's most expensive promises. In an era where every dollar counts, where Canadians are feeling the weight of inflation, stagnant wages, and unaffordable housing, the Prime Minister's inability or unwillingness to break down the math behind a multi-billion-dollar policy came off as arrogant or evasive, depending on who you ask. Defenders of the Liberal government say the increase is essential and overdue. They argue that Canada has long underfunded its military obligations and that this investment is about securing sovereignty and influence in a dangerous world. But without clear communication or accountability, this kind of justification rings hollow to many Canadians, especially when key sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure remain underfunded and overwhelmed. At a time when public trust in government spending is fragile, vague answers won't cut it. The backlash has been compounded by the perception that Carney is increasingly disconnected from the real challenges facing ordinary Canadians. While the Prime Minister discusses fiscal frameworks and defense procurement strategies in polished soundbites, cities like Toronto and Vancouver are struggling under the weight of rising crime, drug overdoses, and housing shortages. The contrast between the daily struggles of Canadians and the lofty international ambitions of their new Prime Minister couldn't be more stark. The sense of elitism, of decisions being made from above without consultation or explanation, is growing. Opposition voices, especially from Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith, have seized the moment to hammer Carney's credibility. Poilievre, although no longer holding a seat in Parliament, remains a powerful voice in Conservative politics and continues to rally support through public appearances and digital media. He has accused the Prime Minister of hiding the true cost of Liberal policies and has demanded detailed budget projections. Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, has also made headlines by aggressively pursuing pipeline development, urging Carney's government to stop dragging its feet on energy approvals and start engaging with economic realities. At the provincial level, tensions are rising. Premiers in provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan are questioning whether they will face reduced federal transfers as Ottawa shifts funding priorities. These provinces argue that defense spending shouldn't come at the expense of domestic stability or economic development. Smith has even suggested that Ottawa is more concerned with earning international praise than solving national challenges. In a time when unity is already fragile, this kind of disconnect could deepen political and regional divides. In British Columbia, frustrations are mounting over policies that critics say reflect ideological extremism rather than practical governance. The most striking example came from an elementary school in Nanaimo, where young children were reportedly given cartoon-style cards with information about how to consume hard substances. This occurred under Premier David Eby's NDP leadership, which has championed safe supply programs despite widespread concern. Though not directly linked to Carney, The federal government's silence on such issues and its continued support for similar harm reduction policies have created unease among families who feel these approaches are endangering youth rather than protecting them. All of this is unfolding as Canada's per capita business investment continues to lag behind other developed nations. Major infrastructure projects are stalled, red tape is everywhere, and investors are increasingly cautious about entering a market where government priorities seem to shift with little warning or logic. While Carney pitches his defense plan as an engine for long-term growth, skeptics argue that without strong domestic foundations, like energy production, manufacturing, and technological development, military spending alone won't spark the kind of economic revival Canada needs. There's also a growing sense that freedom of expression is under threat. In Ontario, a school board member was suspended for voicing respectful opposition to mandatory land acknowledgements. She argued that compelled speech violated her constitutional rights and undermined democratic principles. Her suspension, however, reinforced concerns that dissenting views, no matter how politely expressed, are being punished. It's becoming harder for citizens to speak freely without fear of professional or public backlash, and critics blame the federal government for enabling this climate through silence or complicity. Carney's leadership style is now under a microscope. His background in global finance, while impressive on paper, is beginning to clash with the expectations of a democratic electorate. Canadians want more than polished talking points. They want transparency, humility, and solutions grounded in lived experience. They want their leaders to answer hard questions, not sidestep them with slogans. Carney's silence in the face of financial scrutiny wasn't just a moment of discomfort. It was a red flag, a sign that behind the confidence and credentials, there may be a troubling lack of accountability. If the Prime Minister hopes to lead Canada through the turbulent years ahead, he'll need to do more than deliver speeches and set global targets. He'll have to engage with voters, respond honestly to criticism, and provide real answers, especially when hundreds of billions are on the line. His government must realize that silence in politics often speaks louder than words. And right now, what Canadians are hearing is deafening.